Well, hello everyone, and welcome to another edition of Unplugged. Last week we started off by talking about it being frustrating. This week, a little bit worse than that. I think embarrassing, probably the word sobering that comes out of it. I must admit, and not because we're eternally pessimistic, but you could see it coming. You could see the entire pattern of that game unfolding during the week as you sort of assessed it in advance, and not because we of any level of distrust, but you could see the script. You could see West Coast coming so close to winning the week before, firing up the little side script of McQualter coaching against Ross Lyon, thinking, oh, the breakthrough win. You could just see a headline being written about that, and you knew that we had a tendency to be sluggish against the Eagles in Perth. And if I was to start off with it, we had Phil Deladakis on last week who mentioned that at times when there is a degree of expectation on us that we can be tentative, or whether we don't come out of the blocks in the way that you would expect. And the man on the moon knew that West Coast were going to be fired up for 1,000 reasons. One of them being that they would have looked at the fixture against us as a winnable game. They would have looked at our form as being vulnerable. We had a couple out. They were playing at home. That they'd been in better form. And we absolutely should have seen that coming. And every time we've played the Eagles over there in Perth, when we've been favourites and they've been struggling, we've dawdled out of the blocks fumbly with low pressure and making mistakes. They've got the jump on us, they've got the crowd involved, and we've been able to wrestle it back. Obviously, not this time. And I just don't understand if you're playing a side whose confidence is fragile, which West Coast is going to be. They haven't won a game, so that level of self belief is going to be iffy. That if you can just come out early and put one on their nose in the first 10 minutes, not literally, but kick the first two or three, silence the crowd, put them on the back foot. That might be all it takes in a situation like that. And it just frustrates me because it happens every single time we're in that position. We seem to come out, half-assed, unsure, unsteady, lacking confidence. We get them into the game and we pay the price for it. And we're not the type of side that can afford to do that. Michael, you've got the sub vest off and onto the ground. You were in Perth for the game, so you can give us a perspective of what it was like at Optus Stadium watching that all unfold. But nice to have you with us.
Oh, thanks, guys. Yeah, it was a blast, let me tell you. Yeah, look, I sat behind the goals with the just behind or with the cheer squad, such as it was over there, and props to them for I got to see a bit firsthand of what they do and how they set up and whatever, and props to the guys who and girls who made the trip over and organised it all. But it's only the second time I've been to Optus Stadium. The first time was when it was its first season, I think, and the logistics of getting in and out are great, but on a sunny day, it's not a great view from behind the goals. The sun kind of skirts around the edge of the grandstand roof, and then the stands are like Metricon. There's a gap between the top of the stand and the bottom of the roof, so the sun sneaks in there for about 20 minutes. And behind the goals was actually the viewing wasn't great, but no, the viewing wasn't great because yeah, it was a, let's be frank, it was a shit show from pretty much the first bounce. We looked hesitant. It just looked like we'd picked up from the last quarter of the Carlton game. We just lacked confidence. We looked hesitant. We didn't want to move the ball on. Um, yeah, and like you said, Parko, West Coast got a sniff. I reckon they sniffed early that we were vulnerable, that we straight away didn't look like we wanted to, as you say, make a jump, get the first couple, silence the crowd. Um, of course, the Adam Selwood factor was there, and they had a minute silence for him before the game, which is fantastic. Um, but yeah, the writing was on the wall early. They, a lot of things went wrong. They had a lot of emotion apart from that. There is it Goff or Croft, their defender, walked in, came to the midfield and automatically looked like Joel Selwood V2, had 24, kicked his first goal in footy. Um, yeah, they just seemed up and about. Cripps scored an early goal against his old mob. All the pieces just fell together. And a couple of times we looked like we were going to, come back. We kicked a couple in the last quarter, got within 17 points, but in all honesty, it just never looked like it. I think after that, as I recall, they ripped the ball out of the centre, and 3 possessions later they had a goal. Um, so yeah, it was the voice of affirmation thing that people talk about. I've never watched a game in Adelaide, but 42,000 Eagles supporters made a hell of a lot of noise. You don't realise till you're sort of sitting in amongst them how loud it really is. And of course, they were doubly up and about because of them playing so well, and they could sniff a win and everything. But they're not aggressive. They're not a bad bunch, but gee, it's quite intimidating sitting in amongst it all.
And the remarkable thing is, having been over in the West, they've got more fans than Fremantle, but Fremantle are almost louder again. They're very loud crowd. The Dockers, and yeah, Optus Stadium, terrific venue. An upgrade on the old Subiaco, which had a bit of character certainly, but yeah, there's certainly some logistical aspects to it in terms of sun bouncing off glass, and as you say, peering through those little cracks and all of that. But we made the observation, and Brad Klebanski, I was lucky enough to work with, he does barrack for Hawthorn, but he tweeted out a few stats that, what were we, plus 18 marks, plus 11 contested possessions, plus 7 clearances, plus 55 disposals. And I reckon we probably had the 3 best players on the ground and never looked like winning the game against the bottom side. If you can make any sense of that, um, yeah, then you've got us covered.
Yeah, it was an interesting game where, as you're saying, I think we probably say we had 4 players turn up on the day, and the rest were there, but it just wasn't a team performance. We basically looked like the rowing team who had the one row and not rowing. We were moving, but we either were in a bit of a swerve and a bit of a we lost our I guess synchronicity between the team. Things didn't connect. We didn't. Yeah, just things did not click all day. It just I feel like we have a bad trip over there or something like that. It's something just wasn't right, and yeah, we just looked completely lost on the day. And I think the old "I'm not angry, I'm disappointed" thing comes out here, because that's pretty well how I think most supporters feel. It was hugely disappointing, but you didn't get angry because you're going, we thought it might happen. We had a feeling that it was something, and we said last week that we've got to get out there and hit them hard early, and basically get on top of them early and try to knock them off, get the crowd out of the game. But we just didn't do it. We let them start strong, and they ran over top of us early, and we never recovered from it. So it's I feel sorry for Michael having to pay to go over and watch that sort of thing. It's it's a little bit of a kick in the teeth when you sort of expect a game that you think, oh look, we should win this, but then you get served up that and you go, well, it'd almost be a bit of a why did I bother sort of feeling at times, I would assume.
If we were to squeeze, Michael, I guess a bit of perspective after a few days, I mean, how do we rationalise it in the sense that, look, it's sobering and it's a reality check, but does it, if you look at a season where you've beaten, I won't necessarily count the Port win. I mean, yes, that's a top 4 side, but they've been beaten by 100 points 3 times or something this year. They're obviously not going that well, but certainly the Geelong win versus, say, the West Coast loss. We had some heavy defeats to good teams like Brisbane and the Western Bulldogs. That loss to Carlton was kind of 50-50-ish. This clearly a bad loss. Does this one define us more than, say, the Geelong win does? Is it the reality that we are capable of one thing, but if we're slightly off, this other thing can happen? Or do you hold graver concerns than that? I guess looking at it big picture, early in the year, we were quick and running and taking it on against Geelong and against Richmond and early against the Bulldogs and early against the Giants, was our confidence rattled by those sides then slicing us open and we've gone back into our shell? Or is there another reason, confidence, leadership, why we've become a bit more subdued, so to speak?
Think a little bit of pretty much everything you said there. I was talking to somebody the next day about it, and I think I said that, we're talking about the Gold Coast game next week and how they could absolutely get hold of us potentially. And I said, well, we went into the Geelong game after getting belted by Port in a preseason match and belted by Adelaide in round one, and we came out and looked great. Same with the Fremantle game. Went into that with very little expectation. Even saw the Richmond game as a banana peel. And we played really well. So that just seems to be how we're rolling at the moment. But you're right also that to go over there, and whilst West Coast were, well, they were due. They were one good tackle away from breaking the drought last week, and they had all the off-field stuff happening. So we were kind of like it's so St Kilda that we were the ones who were put into the shell and loaded into the shotgun. Yeah, it's is it youth? Is it coaching? Is it structure? Is it confidence? Um, I think our good friend of our show always says that footy's a mental game and 90% of it's played above the shoulders. And I think that's pretty true because, you could see, as just looking hesitant, last quarter against Carlton and 90% of the game on Sunday, we looked scared to move the ball quickly. We looked scared to run forward of the footy lest it come flying back over our head. And it just looked really mental. So I guess in summary, I'm a bit of a loss just to see which side of the scales it is.
And we desperately lack height, clearly. If you look at our defensive structure, Battle goes out, so Howard would normally play. He goes out, then normally Cordy would play. He's also injured. Obviously, Barrett's not ready. Taru's A, suspended, B, a kid. Barrett's not quite, physically developed in that sense. Schoenmakers, he's probably ready to play, but he's not physically one-on-one a great competitor. You're throwing Caminiti between forward and back. And then at the other end, obviously, Max King's not there to compete in the way that, say, Curnow did the week before and Mackay, who were game breakers. Then you look at Oscar Allen and Bailey Williams took a couple of nice grabs late to get us. And look, height's clearly an issue, but I had a Richmond mate ring me yesterday saying that we've become the Washington Generals in the sense that you look at being loaded into the gun. It was like the Washington Generals' role to lose to the Harlem Globetrotters and, play their role, so to speak, in the theatre. Obviously, West Coast were primed for that first win. We spoke about the McQualter factor, but you look at recent years, Cochin's 300th, Buddy's 300th, coaches getting sacked and all that sort of stuff, and the way it all seems to fall. But I guess that's the part that I was
Rumour
most
Harvey
frustrated
breaking
about. You
the
could see
games
the
record.
track that we were going to walk into. Yeah. When North were horribly out of form and all we had to do was win to make the 8, but that was the one game they got up for because they obviously had to. But it was just, you could see the trap that was going to be set. You're just sitting there thinking they've got a sniff, so you have to start well, and instead you just walk out all hesitant and do the one thing that makes you more vulnerable by just not being switched on right at the start when they were going to come at you. I mean, if we'd have kicked the first 3 goals of the game, we would have beaten them by 10 goals probably. We would have knocked the stuffing out of them, and that's it. But instead, you wake them up. And credit to them. Look, they thoroughly deserve to beat us. So we're easily the better side, despite everything we said before. But I'm actually surprised Ross didn't take the bait with that press conference question when they asked him if he was happy for Andrew McQualter. I thought that might have been angry Ross, but he actually handled that one a little bit better than I thought. But in terms of the scoring aspect of it, H, is it time? I know we'll talk about selection later on, but you look at guys like Collard and some of those guys in the forward line. Were they up for a little bit and this is a natural down, or are some of the concerns we had about Collard last year perhaps realistic?
It just seems to be a few of them go missing. And I would have thought being home in West Australia, he'd be primed to go, I'm going to put on a show here. I'm going to be the one who's going to be in there, in and under, getting the ball, making those opportunities up forward, being basically trying to make it his own show. But a bit like it was last week, just felt half a step off. Made a few contests. He took flight one time and decided to try to mark it a year at one stage. But it just didn't seem to be there. Didn't seem to be the one making the opportunity. I mean, he was always going to be playing second fiddle to Higgins, but he can't do it on his own. Higgins can't do the whole job by himself. And basically that's what he was almost left to do up there, because there wasn't a lot of support for him. And when he's a small forward and basically our number one target at exactly the same time, that doesn't work. You can't be trying to hit up the small forward who should be the one there crumbing when the forward brings the balls down. If he's the one being hit up, then Collard should be there waiting for if the ball hits the ground. And it just didn't feel like he was there enough. I had a lot of high hope for him for this week. I thought it was the great opportunity for him to do something, but it just didn't happen. And I mean, he wasn't alone. That's the one thing we can say. He was far from alone on the weekend. And it's a question now. Has that form lost that he needs to go back to Sandy and give someone else a go, or is he going to find it again? It's hard to tell. It didn't seem to be any real sign to say, look, he's trying hard and it's just not working. There's a little bit of it there, but it wasn't that whole, I'm doing everything I possibly can to change this. So let's we can't drop, I guess, 12 or 13 players a week. That's something impossible. But at the moment, he's probably towards the top of the list of those that will be. It's unfortunate, but there's going to have to be a few changes to stop what we saw on the weekend. Whether that be a big name go along with well, that someone gets the old Milne Del Santo treatment from Rossline and drop a couple of big names or something, but things have to change.
As Tim Rosen said, I think McLennan got rage shoved for a mistake in the third quarter. I think Riley Bonner got rage shoved against Brisbane late last year and never played again, got delisted as a result of that a bit later on in the piece. But I think if you look at the twos, which we'll touch on later, I think Butler had one possession until halfway through the last quarter. He then kicked 2 goals in a minute. But whether that's doing enough, no, is probably the answer to that. But some of these guys might come up in our awards, but it's round 10, so you don't want to write off. We've had conversations around Jack Steele with clearly the restrictions that it looks like he has in his game at the moment. He's still laid 14 tackles. He works hard. I'll never criticise Jack because he puts in absolutely everything. And the only issue would be whether his body's letting him down now because nothing else is going to. His heart and mind and all of that stuff never will. But clearly those concerns remain. Brad Hill, though, Michael, now he's played some good footy this year, but 4 or 5 of the mistakes he's made, you look at signs of a player that's obviously been in the game for a long time and whether either it's pace catching up with him or other little bits like that. But the Bulldogs game where he got run down twice, when obviously he had numerous chances to dish the ball off. And then this game on Sunday where, he missed the target 20 metres away across ground, then followed it up and then got caught holding the ball. But probably alarmingly, that throw in the last quarter where it looked like a player that was almost deer in the headlights. Do you look at Brad Hill now? He's never been obviously great in the contest. He's been better outside the contest. But do you harbour some concerns that that's the sign of a player in his 30s where the pace has become a bit of an issue?
Yeah, and can I just say, in the area around me, excuse me, on Sunday, um, Brad Hill probably was whipping boy number one, because of all those mistakes that you mentioned. And um, look, it's possible. It's something we've got to think about. You know, he's the wrong side of 30. He's built a career on running power and precise disposal, and both those things um, were very, you know, were barely seen on Sunday. As you said, that deer in the headlights thing had, you know, it was visions of Frankie Packett against Fremantle over there, you know, when he got pinged for holding the ball and we lost the game and Longbeal kicked that goal after the siren. But yeah, he just looks like, to be fair, quite a few of his teammates a bit lost in confidence. But I will say, a couple of the times when he's was interesting watching from behind the goals, because a couple of the times when he had the ball and he looked hesitant and there was just nothing going on up the field. Um, he's looking for options and there was just nothing happening. We were scared to run into space or do something to create something with a bit of flair. And just on a semi-related thing, Nas a few times was in the same boat. And I caught myself thinking, is Nas thinking to himself at the moment, am I in a team that can fully take advantage of my skills and the positives in my game? Because a couple of times I thought to myself, gee, if that was, you know, Rosie, Butters, and Horn Francis running forward of the footy and giving him options or whatever it may be, rather than us just standing there staring at him, wondering what he's going to do with the footy. I don't know. I hope I'm wrong. I really hope I'm wrong. But just I caught myself thinking that a couple of times. And I think with Brad, there was a little bit of the same. There's no cohesion. There's no link up play. There's very little teamwork on Sunday. And Brad was kind of the victim of it, albeit a few things by his own hand.
Yeah, it's interesting, that NAS conversation. It was amusing, obviously, the fan getting him to sign something that it was a fake contract, which was pretty clever. But yeah, you think of all of that luring players across and keeping NAS. Obviously, our form has to say something. The Crows are going pretty well. They're the ones that have got the big offer in front of him. He's clearly good mates with Mason Wood and a few of the others, and hopefully that means something. If that means Mason Wood has to play till he's 40, so be it. If that means getting it done. But I guess rubber stamping that game in terms of votes, it might be a quicker process this time, but I only gave votes to 4 players, which is probably the fewest in a while. And I actually only wanted to give votes to 3, but I tacked Wilkie on because I thought his effort against the Tide was worthy of a vote. He battled hard, as he always does. Carried that defensive unit, which at the moment he always does, so he got a vote. Gave Jack Sinclair 2, which, I mean, for a 38 possession, 30 kick game, that sounds harsh, but obviously didn't have quite the same influence. But, you know, he worked really hard, played well, was clearly in our best. 3 to Jack Higgins, having a sensational year by every conceivable measurement. Often a whipping boy in the past, but not this year, doing everything right. And 4 votes to Rowan Marshall, who I thought was the best player on the ground. Certainly our best player, Herculean effort, 27 possessions, 40 hit-outs, a goal, something like 8 inside 50s and 7 clearances. According to Ross, he was crook during the week as well. So, yeah, that's what we've seen from Rowe a few times in the past, where he carried not just the ruck, but carried our midfield in many respects as well. So, yeah, he gets the 4 votes. Michael, how did you divvy up your 10?
Yeah, I very similar. I gave 3 to Rowan for all the reasons you just mentioned. I thought it was his best game for the season by so far. That it wasn't funny. That was the 2024 Rowan Marshall. we saw last year. I gave 3 to Higgins for his 5 goals. It was interesting sitting behind the goals towards the end when the game was pretty shot. We did go forward a couple of times, and it really looked like we were looking for Higgins, almost as if to say, well, the game's done, but let's try and get snags up the common ladder a little bit. So to take something out of the game, I gave 2 to Sinclair. 30, as you say, 38 possessions in any other game probably would be worth a hell of a lot more than that, but never stopped trying for the whole game. And I gave 1. I wanted to give 1 to Wilkie because I saw him close up for half a game and he was filthy at what was going on. He got outmarked in contests a couple of times and he was filthy on himself. But I gave 1 to Jack McRae just for playing any amount of time with a punctured lung.
Mm.
You can throw that
Yeah.
you can throw that 1 to Wilkie because you've only given 9 there. So
Oh, okay, fair enough. We'll give Wilkie a vote then.
so you get the extra one.
Yeah, 3-3-2-1. That's 9. Yeah, we got you. There we are.
Yes. Yes. Sorry.
H, yours?
Yeah, it's a similar, almost cut copy paste here. It's 4 players as well. Spread them out. I gave two to Wilkie down back. He's basically had to do most of it himself, and the barrage that came in, it could have been a whole lot worse. And yeah, he's the reason we didn't lose that by you'd almost say an embarrassing number. And I guess 5 goals against the winless team is an embarrassing number almost, but yeah, could have been a whole lot worse. 2 also to Sinks that 38 and I think it was 11 inside 50s and that's not a number that would normally get a 2-vote game, but in one where it probably wasn't as effective and as, I guess, stand out as much as usual. That's another 2 votes there. Got 3 to Higgins. Yeah, 5 goals, lone hand. Obviously, early on, we thought Mason would be the forward that was going to be the dangerous one, but he dropped off. Sharman wasn't really causing a lot of danger up forward, but yeah, Higo stood up all day and gave everything he had, and hopefully this is just a continuation of what he's going to do all season, and a 50-plus return this year will be so good from him. So hopefully it's just what we're going to be seeing more of for the rest of the season out. And 3 as well to Marshall. Huge game. Could have been the difference, but just the lack of support, the lack of anything else around him that was basically there to complement what he was providing in the middle. You can have that one player in the middle doing absolutely everything and not doing anything wrong, but you got nothing around you. Basically, it's almost to nothing.
Yeah, like that Giants final. Unfortunately, Marshall was enormous in that game, and I think Jack Steele as well. But that was it. They were kind of the lone hand in the middle, those two, that particular day at the MCG. H, your Jason Blake Awards. I think Michael gave the pretty good shout earlier with his nomination in terms of votes, who might figure prominently. But which way did you go?
Even despite giving votes, I've got to go Cal Wilkie. He's not going to get a lot of praise for the weekend from anyone. But the effort and what it would have taken out of him to do what he did on the weekend, and just that constant ball coming in, and it wouldn't be fun. That's for sure. You would hate to be the one doing that all game, because as I said, despite him getting a number of votes, I'd be handing it over him this week.
Michael, yours?
I'm going Graham Marshall this week. I think we've been crying out for a game like that for him all season. He's had some injury worries, as you said. Ross alluded to the fact he was crooked during the week. It's just a shame he didn't have any help, at his feet. because that was the Rowan Marshall. When we play well, Rowan Marshall will play like that, and we'll win more games than we lose. He's had his detractors, and it was just great to see him, you know, pretty much take the team on his shoulders at some point because he was getting no help, and he just like he willed the ball forward a couple of times, and I was just wrapped for him. So, and could I also give a slight off-field one because the on-field, a lot of it doesn't bear thinking about this week. The For anyone who's ever tried to catch a train at Southern Cross Station after a big game at Marvel, you know what an absolute horror show it is. Perth Stadium, they have built a train station right next to the ground, and it's clearly designed with the singular purpose of getting 40 to 60,000 people out of that place as quickly as possible, and it does it magnificently. We all just stood there thinking Southern Cross needs to come bring some people over here and learn how to do it. The signage, the amount of staff they had on, the whole process, just train after train after train, one after the other, like 30 seconds apart, just ferrying people into the city. It was an absolute pleasure compared to the rubbish that Southern Cross puts on after a big game.
I haven't seen a city in Australia and probably the world that does public transport worse than Melbourne, but it is a bit of an issue. But yeah, they've got a few things right over there. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, there's a few nominations. I think McRae a good shout for obviously playing with the injury, but I wanted to give a mention to Liam O'Connell, who I thought is battling pretty hard. He's not getting a stack of the ball. He'd be better on the weekend in that space, but his tackling, his pressure, his courage. He does a lot of really hard things, puts his body in the hole, showing some nice signs. Obviously, a lot of those kids, no questions on their toughness. Obviously, you then want to see the other part of their game develop. Like, Garcia's a tough kid. You want to see him start to get a bit more of the pill and those sorts of things. But O'Connell certainly, doing a pretty good job for us. So, especially with Stocker out of the side. Now, my Shannon Knoll, before I sort of hand it around, a bit more of a rant, and it's at the club in terms of the communication around injuries. Now, we're not alone. I mean, Geelong writes long-term, medium-term, short-term for all their injuries, so there's no indication of weeks. They have players late withdrawals from games that aren't even on their injury list. So we're not alone in that space with being somewhat cryptic, but even in the last 2 days, so you look at that, you had Ross's presser last Friday where he said, we're confident that Liam Stocker, they got it early, he'll miss 3 weeks. So he missed that game on the weekend. Injury list comes out today, 3 weeks. So that means 4 at least. So the initial thing only 2-3 days ago of 3 weeks was immediately underestimating. So that goes up again. Jack McRae yesterday. Now, I know injuries like punctured lungs and things like that, probably hard to get a read on. But if they're hard to get a read on, don't sell the false message. We're not. I think they said, we expect it to be 1 week. Injury list comes out today, 2 to 3. And I bet you next week it'll still say 2 to 3. And he'll end up missing 4 or something like that. Now, we're not immune to disappointment. We're not immune to bad news and frustration. We've had enough of it over the journey. And if the player's going to miss a number of weeks, I'm not suggesting they're telling fibs. I reckon they're giving the optimistic view. But how often does the optimistic view come true for any player in the league in terms of injuries? So, and look, you go all the way back to the Max King thing at the start of the year. Now, they're probably genuinely confused by that, like all of us are here, but I still don't think there's been any clear medical explanation given, when there would clearly be one, as to why he had an arthroscope because he was a little bit sore about 4 weeks out from round 1, was considered touch and go for round 1. Then by round 5, he had to have an additional operation. And Bruce Eva interviewed him a couple of weeks ago. He's only on bike and pull. He's still not even running yet. So has anyone from the club come out and said, the doctor has found this, this, and this. This is what's wrong with him, and this is why he's not playing? Now, I get it. They're talking about privacy and all of those sorts of things, but I think there's got to be some degree of transparency, because at the moment the club will come out and say, such and such has got a little nick in his calf, he'll miss 2 weeks, and you cannot take it seriously. Like, is it going to be 2 weeks? Is it going to be 6? Who knows? I just think there needs to be, if there's a possibility that it's more than you say it's going to be, that's okay. We've been disappointed before. and it'll happen to us again. Just hit us between the eyes with the truth. I was thinking of an analogy before. Let's say you've got a partner out there and you tell her, going out to watch the footy, I'm going to be home at 6, and you're home at 8. Going to be pretty pissed at you, thinking you said 6, it's 8. If you say at the start, I'll be home at 8, they might be a little bit nerfed, but they'll be like, okay, I'll expect you at 8 then. You know what I mean? Like, is it a reasonable analogy where it's like, don't undersell, if anything, oversell, and, come back at us the right way in that sense. But yeah, that's mine. I just think just be slightly more transparent if possible. You're Shannon Noel.
How long have we got? It's one of those weeks where it's a bit, yeah. It's just got to be a team lift. They've got to get together. They've got to group up and actually just go, where are we going? What is this? What are we aiming for? We've clearly almost gone over there as a group of individuals. There was no unity there. It seems like there was no let's do this as a team. It was, we got over there. They all ran out in the field. Few of them did as much as they could, and the rest was sort of a bit individual on the day. But we've got to get together as a group and just figure this out. Is it a season that we're going to actually challenge something, or are we just going to let it all slip away and then grab another couple of wins that may cost us in the end again, like possibly last year? We have a couple of late wins and we bump ourselves down the draft order, or figure out where we're going. What are we actually doing? Because the stories we're sort of getting sold at the moment is like, we're all in it for win every game, etc. But I don't know. There's times you sort of go, are they really? Are we really aiming for something this year, or is it just I don't know. Is it one of those seasons that we go, all right, all the young kids in, get games into them. That's how we feel this year is going to finish up. We need to prepare for the future here, and if that's the case, then just do it. Don't straddle along. Just playing whatever we can and pull out a few wins here and there, and we'll probably pull out a couple of wins that we don't expect coming up again. But if we're not going to challenge, it's time for the kids, and we'll accept that. I don't think there'll be any fans out there go that we won't accept it if that's what we're going to do. We're going to play for the future. So just, it goes along the same lines of, I guess, what you with the injuries there. Just give us the message of what's happening. Let's concentrate on getting get Naz signed, get the few bits and pieces, get the group that is going to lead us ahead.
Yeah, I think that's a fair shout, which we'll have a look at with selection as well. But Michael, who needs a lift? Obviously, the list could be a long one.
Yeah, I had to do a bit of culling. A midfielder who has no tackles and one clearance gets my nod for this week. Marcus Windager. He's a fourth-year player now. Where we are with our list, we can't afford fourth list players to just be muddling along, having a good week every 4 or 5, tags a bloke well every 4 or 5 weeks. Got to be better than that. We don't have the luxury. We don't have the gilt-edged midfield of just having Marcus toddle along in their wake. If it's an unfortunate fact that he needs to lift, because he's the sort of bloke in the fourth year that we are relying on becoming a much better player. Unfortunately, that he is at the moment. He's okay. He's a good player, but can we afford the luxury of just having good players in their fourth year? And a quick off-field one too to the Sandringham social media team. branding your like Monday highlights as here's some magic from the game on Sunday when you got belted by 10 goals is they can probably pump their brakes a little bit on the rhetoric of magical highlights in a 10-goal loss, and it's been happening for 2 or 3 weeks now. So just ease off, boys.
That's a bad marriage at the moment, that one. Obviously, the future doesn't look pretty in that space, but there was a bit to take out of the Sandy performance, which is obviously our segue into the look at the Gold Coast game. But I think spot on with Windhager. I mean, is he a tagger or is he a bit more than that? I don't think he can be just a tagger in 2025. There's got to be an ability to be an out-and-out midfielder. And, yeah, you're right. Shades of when we recruited Blake Acres, actually, where he tends to play well once a month. And obviously Blake's gone on
Dunstan.
to flourish somewhere else. So obviously we would hope that Windhager can do that with us. But, yeah, the performances for Sandy. So further to what H was saying a moment ago, so Zach Jones has had 39, having had about 35 the week before. So that's thumping on the door. Boxall went back and played well. Hunter Clark played very well. Liam Henry continues to just sort of muddle along down there, which is immensely frustrating. Our rucks down there were pretty good. Both Dodson and Heath showed a bit, but is it a case of we need height, so you've got to roll the dice there in some way, or is that not the right way to do it? But I think, Michael, just on that balance between giving yourself the best chance of winning games versus developing your next generation, because it's hard to ignore Jones. I think Clark has to play, particularly with McRae out. But then do you go like Boxall? Do you go Schoenmakers? Are you going younger? Like, is there a chance that it's Boxall, not Jones, or do you pick both of them?
Um, yeah, look, what H was saying before about, find a direction and head in it. 2 weeks in a row, Jones is given a pretty compelling reason to be picked. And to be honest, he hasn't been awful when he has played in the seniors. So he goes back and has two performances like
No,
that. I'd absolutely pick
correct.
him
Yeah,
this week. Clark as well, not Butler. Given as you said, like two kick, one kick until time on in the last quarter. I have to admit I didn't see the Sandy game this week. So I'm still doing other things in Perth, but from what I hear, yeah. Max Heath, I think he deserves a go now, but it is it a pointer that when we name an emergency ruck, as we tend to do most weeks, it's Boyd every week. If Max Heath was close, would you not at least plonk him in as the emergency ruck last week or the week before? I don't know. Does that mean that the selectors don't rate him or whatever? I just thought that was an interesting point, but I think it's we won't know until we give him a crack. And Gold Coast rucks, their midfield's absolutely gilt edged, but their ruck division's neither be Wits or who's a good ruckman, no doubt, but Ned Moyle, who played last week, I think, they're not Max Gorn, so maybe it is time to have a week of rowing the ruck and Heath/Boyd forward, and if that's the structure they go with, I definitely give Max Heath a crack. We won't know until we give him a go.
yeah. It's interesting. I know the knock on Max had been whether he can run or cover the ground quickly enough. You're right on board. I mean, I wonder whether, for example, in the Perth game, because you've got to fly your emergencies, they might sit there and think, well, we'd rather Heath play for Sandy, and if someone's not going to play, we'll take Boyd over. And maybe Heath would be more inclined to be an emergency for a Victorian game, maybe, because that way you can still play him for Sandy anyway. Yeah, Dodson you'd think would be further back, being the recruit from the draft just gone, but you never know. We need height and we need obviously midfield strength, particularly with McRae going out. I think Jack McRae had 21 possessions after puncturing his lung, which I think is worth mentioning. And I think he laid the second most tackles on the ground during that time. So full praise to him again for that effort. But H, where do you lean on that? You'd think that Clark, Boxall, and Jones are the three that are putting their hand up loudest. McRae has to go out, so that's one. Do you look then at dropping Collard and playing Travalia with a full game or something like that?
Possibly. With an injury and that, we might see maybe Collard again going back to the sub or something. That's a possibility as well. But Boxall just should not have been dropped. I don't think. I don't know what he did wrong to actually be dropped. And there was one I was quite miffed about last week, to be honest. So he needs to be in the side. I don't think he's done anything wrong yet. So yeah, he comes in. Jones comes in. That's. I think we said last week that we thought he probably should have been a shout to play over there. Experience on his side and that sort of thing, and that showed on the weekend that experience would have been probably something that we could have used. It would have been nice to have had someone just to go in there and throw themselves at a few packs, just at some stage, just to knock a few of them off their feet a couple of times or something, just to try and swing a little bit our way and drag a few players along with him, perhaps. But yeah, that was a couple of selections you look back now and go, they probably should have been in the side. And but yeah, Clark's the other interesting one, whether it's a direct replacement for him, whether you sort of think, well, McLennan struggled a little bit, whether he's the sort of player he might come in for perhaps or something. But it's yeah, again, I was saying before, they might go, okay, we're going to set a bit of an example here and take a big name, but we'll be interesting to see who it could be if that's what happens possibly. But I'm expecting just pretty wholesale changes this week, and we'll go on to how it is, and yeah, not see anything really stamped or anything. But yeah, we'll see what happens. But those two definitely, Boxall and Jones, I think need to come into the team.
I think McLennan started the game okay, and he looks like a footballer, but obviously made a few mistakes after half time and one that saw Ross drag him. I think Ross in the presser, without saying it, alluded to the fact that he wished he had a pick Showan Makers for a bit more height. But again, I don't like him one-on-one in defence. He just gets pushed out of the way a bit too easily. And similar with Keeler, if we play him forward, he's got height, but he doesn't yet have the physical strength. He gets worked under the footy too easily, so it doesn't necessarily solve the problem. So, yeah, whether you get somebody with a bit more of a bigger frame. But in terms of the matchup, so the Gold Coast clearly going very well. They've had back-to-back games at Darwin where they're unbeatable. They did lose their last game at Marvel to Richmond, and they were about 8 goals down at three-quarter time in that game. They were terrible. But you would think they'd obviously look at that and build on it. Their midfield's elite, as we've alluded to. Their forward line, they're scoring very heavily. Ex-St. Ben Long's obviously running amok. It's going to be extra painful, you'd think, if Ben King's slotting goals from everywhere, and our version of that brotherhood is in the grandstand. That obviously adds insult to literal injury in that sense. But look, we haven't lost to them at Marvel since 2014, I think. So it's been about 11 years. We've probably won the last 6 or something against them at the ground. Clearly, this is their best team ever, which isn't saying a lot, but it is their best team ever. If you look at our form at Marvel, though, Michael, across the board, good performances against Geelong and Geelong and Richmond and Fremantle, a stinker against the Dogs. Obviously, against Brisbane, we weren't absolutely disgraceful, but clearly it's where we play our best footy. But it should suit them as well, even though it didn't a few weeks ago. But it is that type of season where every game is winnable and every game is losable, and this is no different. It is a winnable game, albeit tricky.
100%. Like I said earlier, we went into take for example the Fremantle game. Would anyone thought that we've completely negated Brayshaw, Sarong, and the rest of that midfield and do so much damage ourselves the other way? No one was thinking that before the game. So I'm of the mindset now that we'll just go in, but there's very little expectation on us to win, and maybe that's a good thing. Just you alluded earlier to Ben King kicking if he kicks a bag. If I was Max, I'd be hiding somewhere where the television cameras can't find him, because there'll be nothing surer than a directive go out that when Ben starts slotting him from everywhere, find Max in the grandstand eating his pie and looking forlorn, because that'll happen. No question. Um, as for that, one bloke you didn't mention, of course, is Sam Collins, who's arguably one of the best couple of fullbacks in the comp. Um, Whoever we send forward is going to have his hands full. With him, it's, on paper, they should win comfortably, but it's at Marvel. We've got no expectation against us. I just hope we don't get like 8,500 people there, because coming off last week, there's, the supporters of Flatters Attack at Sunday 4:40, and against Gold Coast, will bring 12 of their own supporters. And I
Graveyard
just
shift,
really, graveyard shift. I just really hope that we just don't get a really poor attendance, and, rubber stamp only getting one MCG home game for the next decade.
Well, if you want to make sure you're there, Unplugged is proud to partner with Ticketverse for the 2025 AFL season. So you can get premium seats, watch the game in comfort at Marvel Stadium's Medallion Club for St Kilda home games, exclusive access to fine dining, bars and more. Visit ticketverse.com.au to explore your options at Tickets Sorted. And for those listening to this podcast, keep checking out our socials later in the week, and we should have some giveaways for you if we can. I think Nick's got the keys to the ticket vault, so if we can drag him off a beach in Thailand and find out where that is, we can point you in the right direction for that, and that was certainly a better place to be on Sunday. Jump on your favourite platforms where you've listened to this podcast. Leave us a review, hopefully a kind one, but any feedback is welcome. Of course, all of our socials at Unplugged on Twitter or X, if you will, then Facebook and Instagram at Unplugged Podcast. Same on TikTok. And all of the like, and all of our interviews are up on YouTube, so check out the at Unplugged channel on YouTube. This season we've had obviously Heath Black, Max Hudson, Raf Clark, Brad Crouch, and a couple of others, and we've had some in-principle agreements, which hopefully we get from Nash at the club soon, but we've had a few in-principle agreements on guests over the next few weeks. Matty Young, really want to ask him about, he's almost the last player, Michael, I think, to be in this position where I reckon he played for Hawthorn against St Kilda in the Lightning Premiership of 1996, and then 2 weeks later played for St Kilda against Hawthorn in the ANZ Cup due to one of those very late player swaps that they had in the mid-90s. Also, Jamie Shanahan, as we work our way through the 97 grand final squad, has given us a bit of a commitment to chat in the next month or so, just as he recovers from surgery at the moment. So, good to chat to Shanners about his time at the club and that elusive goal that he never got to kick. And a few in the musical space, which hopefully we can bring over the course of the journey. So, but you can check out our back catalogue of guests. We did share a few of those around Spud's game a couple of weeks ago, talking about his legacy, which really important chats around that too. So make sure you check all of those out. But look, 4 and 6, I think we said all along that we thought 5 and 5 was a reasonable mark to be at. So we're one off that. Obviously, there's a lot of footy still to be played, and as the dust settles, you put every loss in perspective. But hopefully, you can get along to Marvel and give us a home ground advantage against a good Sun side, but by no means infallible. So, bring that one on this week, and thanks for tuning in once again. Go Saints.